My legs are starting to cramp from those 6 long hours I've spent in my foxhole as I grunt and painfully readjust my position. Dew collects in a puddle at the bottom of my fighting position, turning it into a muddy sludge. I squint out across the 300 meters in front of me. There's nothing to spot but the tree line and the occasional deer scampering along, completely oblivious to the hundreds of British rifles aimed in its general direction. Somewhere on the other side of those trees is Jerry, full of vinegar and hate and hell-bent on fresh try at another great war. This old Hitler fellow has been working Germany up into quite a furor the last decade, and weeks ago the dam finally broke with German forces pouring into Poland. To the surprise of nobody, the communists joined them, those poor Polish souls caught between 2 great big hammers. Shame they didn't then go after each other. Would have been a rather nice turn of events if the Krauts and the Reds started to go at it, wouldn't it? Britain and France were quick to declare war on Germany, and ipso facto, here I am, and here I've been for several weeks now, wetting my sodding pants in ditch water, waiting to fight an enemy that has yet to materialize. I've been bamboozled. They call this the Phantom War. Not a single German unit has made itself seen on the Western Front. I thought there was a bloody world war on, and turns all the fighting's in Finland. The Russian Reds getting themselves a proper bruising trying to overrun the small nation. Ah, to hell with it. If the damn Krauts aren't going to act like proper civilized people and get this bloody war started at last, then I'll just have to go to the war in Finland. Commander's asking for volunteers to aid in the Finnish defense, and the Russians may be communists, but at least they have the good sense to fight where they damn well say they're going to do so. I never really liked cold weather. Most of my years in the service were in India, but if that's where the fighting is, well, hell's bells, that's where I belonged. I've had enough of sitting around in a hole like a potted plant. A day later, I'm on a truck, part of a small convoy en route to a Belgian port so we can load up and ship up north. We're no sooner over the French-Belgian border than our lead lorry comes to a screeching halt. Suddenly, the officer in charge of the show hops out screaming, yelling at us to turn around immediately. The Krauts are on the attack. Finally! The war is on at last. You can feel war long before you see it. It's down in your belly, a pulsing, rhythmic beating deep in your guts. It's only as you draw closer that you realize it's not in the stomach. It's the heavy artillery, shells weighing dozens of pounds and packed with high explosives, laying waste to men and machine alike. The dull thumps become more well-defined the closer you get to the fighting, the closer you get to hell itself. We pass by blood wagons hurtling down the road towards the rear areas, packed with casualties. Overhead flyboys zip past, their engines screaming as they race to the front. Somewhere up there in the clouds is a duel taking place, and I don't know much about fighting in the sky, but I'm grateful for the RAF's efforts to keep Jerry's bombers off our necks. There's enough high-velocity death in the air already. We can finally see the effect of dozens of high-explosive shells chewing up the landscape ahead of us. We pass by our own guns now, giving back as good as they're getting. It's incredible to believe anything could survive caught between these 2 great bombardments. We never make it to the front though. Our lorries get commandeered to haul casualties out. Streams of armored trucks, tanks and other assaulted vehicles run past us in long, unbroken lines. Something is very wrong. The war is ahead, not behind. And we're finally given the news. A retreat has been called. The Germans had pushed through the Ardennes, a terribly thick force that nobody would have ever believed could be crossed with giant columns of tanks. And yet the damn Jerrys did just that. Clever bastards. The Ardennes were held only by a small French force. The difficult terrain and dense forest should have made a major German troop movement through the area impossible. Or at least slow and easy to detect, giving us plenty of time to respond and shore up defenses. The blasted Germans managed to evade detection and get as many as 8 divisions through the Ardennes before anyone ever realized what was going on. I haven't fired a single bullet yet. We're already in full retreat. We've been on foot for nearly 2 days now, but the Germans are relentless, and it's hard to blame them. They've got the bulk of the British Expeditionary Force with its back up against the sea. I heard the Navy scrambling to get enough vessels together for a withdrawal, but if they aren't fast enough, the bulk of Britain's fighting force in Europe are going to be destroyed. I came here looking for a fight. Instead, I'm facing a slaughter. But all this damn running don't sit too well with me. If I don't do something, there won't be much left of the British Army to retreat with, even if the blasted Navy gets its ships in order. Retreat may be the correct tactical choice, but it is something that weighs heavy on a man's heart, saps his strength, and destroys his morale. We won't be feeling that weight today, though. When you get experience enough, you learn to read the fear on a man's face, and what it means, because not every fear is the same. In some, you've got the yellow belly aching and quaking fear that makes a man want to surrender the moment his life is seriously in danger, better known as cowardice. In others, though, you've got the fear of death, the fear of bodily harm and injury. This is a rational fear, a fear you can fight, a fear whose grip you can break. I inspect the men under my command, and it's these men I seek out. I aim to break the grip of fear on my men. And besides, I haven't even got to fight in this bloody war yet. Late at night, we slip out of camp. We're miles from the coast, but we've been marching steadily backwards for days. The German army nipping on our heels the whole way. It's only the constant fighter cover overhead that kept Jerry from pushing us out to sea already, and the Royal Air Force is paying dearly for it, losing dozens of pilots a day. Those glorious bastards. I have chosen not to disobey, but to reinterpret my order to retreat. I shall comply per the intent of the order, if not the letter. During the day, my men and I follow the British withdraw ever rearwards. But as we do, we make note of the terrain we pass, eyeing potential ambush sites. At night, we abscond from the general forces, sinking away into the dark and retracing our steps back towards the Germans. The Germans march along confidently without bothering to check for mines, booby traps, or other sinister surprises. That costs them dearly, for my men and I make a sport of crawling forwards under the cover of darkness to mine our route of retreat. Some we lay out to target men, others we place to destroy their vehicles. We also sabotage roads and bridges, using explosive charges to create deep furrows that vehicles cannot cross, or toppling sections of bridges, ideally with crowds currently on them. I aim to make the war personal for the Germans. My men and I slip through the lines in the dead of night. We find the camps of German scouts and ambush them. Often we don't fire a shot. The work done by blade and strangulation wire. Beneath each German corpse we leave a little gift. Once a fellow comes along to collect the body of their countryman, they find their surprise. A grenade with the pin pulled that they've triggered when the body was moved. The men have nicknamed it the 2-for-1 special, and I approve. It is decidedly ungentlemanly warfare. But when you've just started your second war of the century, well, I'd consider that to be anything but gentlemanlike behavior. We may own the night, but by day the Germans are relentless. It is a race to the sea and both sides know it. The Germans push forward aggressively, determined to drive us into the sea, while our navy tries to gather the needed flotilla of ships to rescue the expeditionary force. The fate of Britain hangs in the balance. The Empire will be unable to replace the massive force should it be destroyed, and that would likely be it. The war would become unwinnable. Each day, the fighting is much the same. Artillery comes screaming out from the sky, smashing into our positions. Under cover of the heavy guns, panzers come streaming forward, supported by dismounted infantry. Our anti-tank guns open up on the lumbering German war machines, and the rest of us do our best to keep the infantry from overrunning us. A good old-fashioned British stiff upper lip has seen what could have been a strategic catastrophe become an orderly and coordinated withdrawal. The Germans push, but can find no opening to exploit. British infantry repelling each assault despite the mounting casualties. Still, retreat wears on a man's soul, and morale is close to breaking. With morale broken, the orderly fighting withdrawal will threaten to turn a strategic disaster as lines of men flee for their lives, discipline overtaken by the most primal of human emotions, fear. We avoided this disaster for the time being, but the tension amongst my men is clear. Fear gnaws at the heart of the British Expeditionary Force. On my back is a bloody heavy claymore. Don't remember now where I picked up the silly old thing, but it's come to suit me. In front of us, a German patrol has unknowingly strayed directly into our hidden position. An attack on this patrol will give us away, and any survivors will be able to redirect artillery or panzers onto us. Yet I know what my men need now more than safe rescue off the mainland, and that's a soaring victory. I stand, exposing myself fully to the German patrol, and with a great big wallop of a roar, I brandish the giant sword as I rush forward. I'm not sure who's most stunned, my men or the Germans, but a moment later, I'm glad to hear the roaring of British rifles opening up. Germans fall where they stand as I continue rushing forward, my rifle long forgotten, sword in hand. A German radio operator looks up in terror as I come howling down upon him. The receiver's already to his lips. He never gets the chance to radio our position in, my claymore separating his head from his shoulders in one swing. The victory is small, but its efforts on my men are immediate. Morale has returned, and the men take to slapping me on the back, recounting the story of my loony charge across the battlefield, giant sword in hand. As the tale is told and retold, I slay not only one radio operator, but 4 German soldiers, then half of the German patrol, wicked blade cutting through the crowd ranks like hot knife through butter. They even take to calling me by a nickname, Mad Jack. I let the men have their tall tales, not for my own glory, but for the benefits it has on their spirits. The war's been on for almost 6 weeks now. The and we've been in full retreat for almost half that time. The British Army has barely seen combat, and already its nose has been well and proper bloodied. Let the men have their stories if it gives them something to bolster their mood, and keeps them fighting back with me at night. The mass exodus is finally underway. A flotilla of vessels ranging from Navy ships to civilian pleasure yachts, all commandeered to rescue Britain's army in Europe. Now we dig in for a proper fight, knowing that the fate of our comrades is upon our shoulders. The Germans are like a hungry shark. They can smell blood in the water. The Panzers come at us each day, and each night I lead my ambushes on German patrols. It is on one that was spotted, and I find myself pinned down by a machine gun nest. 100 yards behind me, I can hear my men shouting for me to crawl to them. I survey my situation. 100 yards to my men, 25 to the machine gun. The math is simple, and besides, I'm a bit tired, and crawling just that far for safety seems like a hell of a lot of work. So I crawl forward instead, using the cover of thick bushes and the occasional shell hole to conceal myself. The German machine gunner is sweeping the battlefield in wide arcs. I'm just a few yards away now, when I stand and take a running start, tossing a grenade that arcs perfectly into the machine gun nest. A moment later, the gun and its operator are no more. The men cheer and I wave them on back to the rear. Best to withdraw while we have the opportunity. As I hurry back though, I spot something. It's a bicycle. Muddy and a bit roughed up, but none worse the wear. Why walk back to friendly lines when one can bike instead? I pick up the bicycle, and placing a German officer's cap I've taken as a trophy on the front headlight, I pedal my way to safety. Entering friendly lines, there's a cheer from the boys. Already tales of my charge against the machine gun are spreading. I'm stopped by an officer. I'm sure I'll get a mouthful about regulation uniforms and non-approved tactics. But no, there's not anger, but a worried look in his eyes. "Oh, chap, you seem to have some blood on your neck there," he says. I wipe my hand, and to my surprise, he's right. Hell's bells, I've been shot through the neck. That damn crowd got one in right before the end after all. I make my way to the medical tent, but shoo away the surgeon's concerns. There's men bleeding and dying right there in the tent with us who need attention far more than I. I settle for a quick bandage and some antiseptic. As far as I see it, if the wound was meant to kill me, then it would have by now. After much debate, I do finally agree to his request that I be shipped out for proper medical treatment. I may be leaving Europe early, but I've got my reasons. Someone up the chain has heard of my creative reinterpretation of the order to retreat. And much to my surprise, rather than reprimand me, or possibly court-martial me, they've requested that I investigate an opportunity to continue waging what has been officially termed ungentlemanly forms of warfare. Britain may be out of Europe, but it's by no means out of the fight, and has plans to return. Perhaps if the blasted Americans get their heads out their arses and hop across the pond, we can return sooner rather than later. For now, though, I look forward to my new assignment, even if I have to leave France early. They're calling them commandos, soldiers who will be returning Europe early and slipping behind enemy lines to perform all sorts of dastardly deeds. I look around the civilian pleasure yachts overloaded with war casualties and touch the bandage on my neck. Dastardly deeds sounds like something I'll very much enjoy inflicting upon the Germans. I'll make them whisper my name in fear around campfires and in beer halls. Mein Gott, they'll say when they see me. It's Mad Jack.